Welcome to the Real Estate PB&J Hour on Money Talk 1310 and 100.9 FM. Rosenwomble Realtor Paul Fuqua is here to share market facts, the fundamentals of selling, buying, owning, and improving your home, plus interesting experts. Now, here is Paul.
Well, good afternoon, folks. Welcome back to the Real Estate PB&J Hour here on Money Talk 1310 AM and 100.9 FM. And if you want to, you can go to your computer where it's moneytalk1310.com. We have an interesting subject to cover today. We have in the studio an expert geologist from Radford University, Matthew Reagan, who is going to speak to us about the concerns that come up in residential and commercial properties that relate to buried and above ground oil storage tanks, heating oil, fuel oil, and that there are ramifications of that emanate from those installations, especially when you have to do work to them if they've leaked and finding out that they've leaked. And that's what Matt do, and I'm going to call him Matt. Welcome.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, and he's going to be with us throughout the show, but we're really going to get in depth into this a little later. Kim Pimento, who is my normal co-host here in the studio, has come down with what she thinks may be a contagious bug, and so we've got her by remote. Are you there, Kim? Can you speak right up?
I am.
Okay. Well, I hope you're feeling better.
I am. It's getting better. Better.
Do you want to describe your symptoms, or we leave that alone? No? Okay. Well, basically, I'm Paul Fuqua, and I'm a realtor with Rosenwomble Realty and have been for a quarter of a century. Been very fortunate to sell an awful lot of houses and deal with an awful lot of really fine people, both buyers and sellers alike, and both residential and some commercial elements are part of my practice. And the purpose of this show is to make it available to help elucidate any of the issues that relate to residential home sales, home marketing, buying, to avoid the pitfalls that can dislodge you financially in what can be one of the most critical purchases you make in a lifetime, and that's your home. Because it is a major investment. It may be the largest individual investment you ever make. Being in the hands of a skilled realtor during the process of buying it, and in the hands of a skilled realtor when you're selling it, and with the advice of a skilled realtor as to market value when you make changes and renovations and additions. That seems to be the way this industry is moving, much more of a consultative role rather than being gatekeeper to the listings, because you can go on the computer today and any number of 125 plus sites and look up housing, and you have the opportunity to see what's on the market, but you don't have the opportunity to speak with someone who has had significant experience, as Kim has and as I have and as other of my cohorts at Rosenwomble have, who can help guide you in making decisions. Now, one of the things about the fundamentals of real estate is the costs and the statistics. And Kim, I know you've been home not feeling well, but do you have anything to update our listening audience tonight about the state of the market financially in both rates and rates of sale and things of that nature?
I do, Paul.
But great. Fire away.
Holly Robinson from Advanced Financial Group gave me the rates this afternoon. So the rates: jumbo 6.5%, conventional 6% with 1 point, investment 25% down, 6.5% charging 2 points, FHA 5.375 no points, and VA 5.625 no points, which shows a little bit of improvement, especially on the FHA and VA with no points.
You know, I think that it's still a very moderate increase that we've experienced. So we've come out of a historically low time frame of interest rates, and I think we became spoiled. But I do know that it is volatile, and it impacts you. I think you had a statistic last week wherein the house would cost you approximately $1,000 a month under the 2 7/8 rate that was in place a year and a half ago. In that house today, same loan would be $1,300. Is that ring a bell?
It's actually a little bit more like 15. It's almost like a $500 gap.
Right.
In that. So yeah, it's significant.
Well, let me ask you a question. How is the market doing? Is there anything you've got that you can add about national stats? Because I think people find that somewhat interesting. It's basically cocktail party conversation.
Correct. Yeah, the National Association of Realtors has reported as of yesterday that, and remember, this is in July 2022. We don't have August stats yet.
Right.
Total housing inventory registered at the end of July was 1,310,000 units, an increase of 4.8% from June, and unchanged from the previous year.
Okay.
Unsold inventory sits at 3.3 months supply at the current sales pace, up from 2.9 months in June and 2.6 months in July.
Okay, folks, those statistics are somewhat telling. That is one of the reasons you're going to see modulation of the interest rates.
Correct, and the sluggish sales because of people not feeling like they can get what they want,
yes,
what they can buy.
Yes, but I'm going to say it again. I say it every week. Lenders make their living selling you money like lettuce. So they're going to find a way to help you get into the house of your dreams as best they possibly can. And you have to work with them. And if they can do it, they will. I've seen it too many times.
Yes, and then existing home sales retreated 5.9% in July from June of 2022 and to 20.2% from July of 2021. The average sales price of existing single-family homes nationally has climbed in the past year by a 10.6% rate to its current level of $410,600. In the South, that average is now $374,500. In the Northwest, it is $452,600. The Midwest is $296,000. And in the western United States, it's $633,600.
Say that again. What is it in the West Coast?
It takes a huge jump. $633,600.
That's the median sales price of a resale single-family dwelling in the western portion of the United States.
Mm-hmm. That's about $200,000 over ours.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Well, we come in second, actually, the Northeast. So we come in second.
Wait a minute, Virginia's not the Northeast.
Well, I think they count it. They count it here. They do here. They only give us the South. We're definitely not. We're not really the South. The Northeast.
What are you talking about? We're not the South. I know you're from Texas, but this is the South. This was the capital of the South.
I think we're kind of right on that borderline. But okay, I'll give it to you.
All right. I like to consider us being Southern, but.
Okay, well then our median is $374,500.
All right, that sounds like a good Southern cooking.
Okay. All right.
Now, how are we doing locally?
Locally, as of yesterday, August 30th, there was 4,157 active residential listings, of which 3,374 are single-family homes on the MLS. And 797 of those are attached homes, which is condos, townhouses, quads, and duplexes and things. Last week, our count was 4,196 total on the market, 3,390 single-family, and 811 attached. This decrease in the total listings is less than 1% a week, so it's really not that significant. The number of properties actually available, though, not under contract, in this current count is 3,073, a decrease from last week's of 3,109. So we are seeing less properties available, but we're also seeing less people put them on the market due to the rates.
Right. Do you think that's going to change?
Yeah, I think it'll change. I mean, if you want to sell and you need to sell, you're not going to have a choice.
Right.
You know?
Right.
The number of actual sales closed last week was 540, and the total count of today's for August closed sales is 2,247. For all of July closed were 2,826. For all of June, 3,984. May, 3,339. In April, 3,706.
Now, you've been in this business long enough to be able to give a good idea of why that we have these variations seasonally. What do you surmise is the reason?
Well, school starts always slows us down. It's
Okay.
always slower. Right before school, Labor Day. Some holidays are awesome. July 4th.
This is Labor Day weekend, Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not that we don't sell, but it does slow down when school starts. People are getting their kids back to school, doing, other things. And so we do slow down a little bit. We perk up a little bit in October and then slow down again, probably November. And then we have a perk then at Christmas and right after Christmas.
Yeah, it's always amazed me because people want to be able to purchase a house in December so that their kids can be located at the beginning of the second semester. Plus, I think sometimes bargain hunters show up on the horizon at the end of the year if there are properties that have been sitting out there for a while.
For sure. I've got some interesting information I got off Inman Real Estate News, and it came out today at 9:52 a.m. By Daniel Houston. And it said that the sale environment is likely to get worse before it gets better. Now, this is sales, not price, the sales. A new paper released this week by Goldman Sachs predicts home sales will fall to a seasonally adjusted annual rate of 4.7 million in the fourth quarter of the year. These levels, if they bear out, would represent another drop of 12% from July's sales rate, even after the steep declines that have already occurred. And this suggests the market has yet to hit bottom. The outlook for demand continues to benefit from a tight labor market and a continued demographic tailwind from the millennials passing through their prime home buying years, the report reads. However, the sustained reduction in affordability, waning pandemic tailwind, and the recent decline in purchasing intentions suggest that home sales are likely to fall further through year end. The expected decline in demand through the end of the year would be driven almost entirely by the market for existing homes, which would see sales rates decline by 12% from July through the year's remaining closing months. And that's just the sales. That's not prices.
Right. Well, prices are driven by the demand. I realize full well that if you have a fall off in sales of approximately 10 to 11, 12%, there's going to be an impact on pricing, but it's not going to remove the fact that there are still fewer homes on the market than the prospective buyer would normally have available to him or herself.
Right. And he goes on to say that Goldman Sachs is not yet joining the list of forecasters projecting a broad-based decline in home prices. However, suggests that home values continue to rise, just as a slowing rate they reported. So they're thinking that we're still not going to see a big decrease in sales,
right,
like everybody thinks. And most of the projections I read today, a lot of people say it's a hard comp. It's a hard market to read.
Right. Well, I do have a couple of houses that will be, because for a variety of reasons, that have been delayed in coming onto the market until mid-September, and then one possibly early October. And one, I think, will be a sweet spot property in terms of its pricing, very affordable in a very desirable neighborhood. The other is a high-end oceanfront property that the demand seems not to have slackened at all, because there are folks out there whose fortunes have been enhanced by the fact that their homes, which they've sold for incredible amounts of money in their eyes. And so they're ready to move on to something else of a more permanent and more expensive nature. That's hopefully what we're going to do. That's the way we're going to pitch it anyway. Now, you've been in the business a long time.
Yes.
And if someone calls you up and says to you, Kim, should I put the house on the market now? It's all ready, or should I wait until the beginning of the year? What is your response?
I would do it now. And the reason is I think that if you price it very enticingly,
Mm-hmm.
and it's in good shape, it's clean, because they say that in Virginia, our homes are still selling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our median sales price was $385,000 in July. Remains in Virginia nearly rose 7% from a year ago, a
Right.
gain of $25,000. So we're still seeing it, and they're saying that current markets are still selling at about a 101% over asking.
Right.
And we are in one of those markets.
Yes. Well, we have a built-in constant need for housing.
Yeah, our military, our shipping, our medical field, we have a lot of major industries here that keep our market very strong.
And we've had two functionaries of the local jurisdictions, Virginia Beach and Chesapeake, who've stressed how they are looking to create jobs. Mayor West and then Deputy City Manager of Virginia Beach, Taylor Adams. And their whole focus was the expansion of the job base, which means expansion of rooftops, which means more homes to sell, which means a constant flow, or rather more homes needed to be purchased, means that there is a constant growth in demand. That's the economic theory. We're down to a station break. Everybody, you are listening to the Real Estate PB&J Hour. I'm Paul Fuqua, and I have remotely with us Kim Pimento, and we will be discussing environmental issues with our guest, Mr. Reagan, Matt Reagan from Pollard Environmental. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Now back to the Real Estate PB&J Hour on Money Talk 1310 and 100.9 FM. Rosenwomble Realtor Paul Fuqua gives you the fundamentals of real estate selling, buying, owning, and improving your home.
Well, welcome back. This is Paul Fuqua. You're listening to the Real Estate PB&J Hour, and I'll be repetitive. You're listening to us on 1310 AM, 100.9 FM, or moneytalk1310.com. And if you have any questions for me or Kim or our guest, Matt Reagan, who is the geologist in residence, please call us at 757-497-1310. And as always, you can subscribe and listen to past episodes of the PB&J Hour at your convenience on our YouTube channel, the Real Estate PB&J Hour. Please go on there. You can listen and subscribe. There's a benefit to all involved if I can get a number of subscriptions up to a certain level. I'm not there yet. Now, last week, if you go to the PB&J Hour on YouTube, you can take in what we discussed in show 32. Yeah, Gino's nodding. Yeah, it was show 32. We've done 32 shows. That's incredible. Think 32 hours of listening to me talk. I'd get myself sick. I'm going to use those tapes, put them next to the dog so it won't bark in the middle of the night. Anyway, we discuss the important steps to take in the process of renovating your home. Everybody wants to redo a kitchen or an addition or whatever, and which I'm going to go over real quickly the elements that we discussed and that are available to you in depth on the YouTube channel. Put in writing your overall goal. Visit open houses and builders models to see what today's market demands are and how lighting and colors influence your eye. Models are the result of significant study. I like to talk about how lighting of department stores was influenced by Bloomingdale's 40 years ago, in that they illuminated the corners of the store and made those eye magnets, so that they were able to move product out of what had been dead areas. They also created or eliminated all the walkthroughs. You used to be able to walk into a department store years and years ago before Bloomingdale's, and you could walk straight through the store and not run into one piece of merchandise. They changed all that, and they did it in part with lighting, and that's critical. Take pictures of elements of model homes that appeal to you so that when you get into your renovation, you have some reference. Visit the large furniture stores. The big box furniture stores, they they spend considerable amounts of money to create model rooms. And if you're going to build a house and you're going to make an addition, go see what those people have done. Take pictures of them. And the same thing with regard, that's number 5, any appliances you're considering. You can spend upwards of $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on appliances. I have a good friend who just did a condo that I sold for him, and he spent $10,000 on appliances, and it looks like he spent $30,000 because he bought very wisely. Write down, when you're going through this process of planning, the 3 levels of renovation. Simple, I'm just going to take out this wall. Possible, I'm going to take out this wall and I'm going to kick it out 10 feet and I'm going to widen, I'm going to have a second, third bedroom, whatever you want. And then dream, gee, I'd have this footprint, I'd like to double it, I'd like to go up. But all those can be related to one another, and you don't want to be retracing steps to correct something in a later renovation that you could have handled in your initial renovation. Those overlaps are important. And before you do any work, have a home inspector who is good. I can provide you names if you wish. We're at 757-497-1310. And have it inspected to make certain that the systems are operating, and it need not be, you need not be spending large sums of money to correct problems. Now, we're done. That was last week. We have a geologist with Pollard Environmental. Matt, am I correct? Is there another name? Is there any other?
No, that's me. Thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome. And we're going to be handling a discussion of the ramifications on real estate transactions of environmental regulations, which exist in plenty, that especially those related to his specialty, the heating oil tanks, and diesel and fuel oil tanks, both buried and above ground. Did I state it correctly?
That's it.
Okay. Now, let me ask you a question. You're a certified geologist. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I'm a certified professional geologist with the state of Virginia.
Okay. And what kind of training did you have to go to get that certification?
It was a combination of my educational background, a bachelor's of science in geology, and then also numerous years of work experience under a certified professional geologist.
So when you walk onto this residential property, you're the man. Is that right?
For heating oil tanks, definitely.
So, all right, I like that. That's a good. You want to ask him any more personal questions, Kim?
No, that's fine. He's the man. He puffs up and stomps in there.
Yeah. Oh, listen, this guy's sharp looking. I got to tell you. Anyway, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
What we're looking for from you is guidance in the things we should be concerned with when we have a client who may or may not know that there's a heating oil tank buried somewhere in his yard. Is there any sign that we should look at?
Yeah, of course. The biggest indicator is going to be age. These tanks were put in the ground predominantly in the 50s, 60s, right up until the mid-70s, where they started to kind of fall out of favor. So if you're looking at purchasing a property and it falls within that realm of age, might be a good chance that there is an underground heating oil tank. It's not always guaranteed, but that's the first one I look at. There's also other visual clues that you may see. There's certain pipes that you would see on the exterior of the building, either a fill port or a vent pipe. These are just steel pipes, about 2-inch in diameter. If those are kind of concealed by bushes, your home inspector would be able to locate them. And then there's also the copper feed lines. These copper feed lines run from the tank and deliver fuel to the burner, creating heat for your residents. If you see indications of that in the basement or the crawl space, then there's a very good chance that there was either an above ground or an underground heating oil tank at one time on this property.
Can you use a magnet, like they do at the beach? Would that help?
It sometimes does, but these tanks can be buried from anywhere between, a foot underneath the ground all the way up to 3 or 4 feet. So the best way to find them is to go by the age of that house and then visual clues, like I said.
Right.
Home inspectors are great at pointing them out, and if they have any indication that there might be an underground heating oil tank there, then that's when you're going to want to consult an environmental consultant to perform a tank inspection.
That's you.
That is me, yes.
What's the name of the firm again?
It's Pollard Environmental.
Okay, where are you headquartered?
We started off in Rockville, Virginia, and then we just opened up a new Tidewater branch in Chesapeake.
Okay.
Yep.
And you're it?
I'm it. Yep. Yeah.
Hey, you didn't say that great. I mean, you put a smile on your face, but
Oh no! It's we just started in 2021, so
right.
but I've had a great support group come down also from the central office and get things going.
Rockville, Virginia?
Rockville, Virginia, not Rockville, Maryland,
No.
which is more people used to, but Rockville, Virginia is just west outside of Richmond, maybe 8 or 10 miles.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. What percentage of houses do you think have heating oil tanks in their backyards in this let's say Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Suffolk, and Portsmouth? Is it 30%, 40%?
I would. It definitely varies. I would say maybe around 25 to 30%. But of course, there's going to be a higher percentage with these older neighborhoods, especially in like Norfolk, houses built in, like I said, the 50s or 60s.
I have one of those. Yeah.
Where there's going to be a higher chance that, at one time heating oil was used as a source. In Virginia Beach, not so much. There's a ton of them in Suffolk, Southampton, Isle of Wight. It's hard to put an exact percentage on it in a locality. I would say that in the state of Virginia, there's probably around 225,000 to 250,000 unregulated. And when I say unregulated, that basically refers to a heating oil tank that's in the eyes of the state. It's not like a commercial tank that sells gasoline or diesel fuel. I would say there's about 250,000 of them throughout the state.
So that's your universe.
Yes, that's my main focus.
So what when you see one, because my house definitely has one that I did notice till I cut down a bush, can you not stick something down there to see if it's been filled? I mean, people ask me that. How do we know it has not been properly filled with the slurry cement or whatever?
That's a good question. It's difficult for sure, whether someone filled it correctly or not. Even by just sticking some type of stick or probe down the fill pipe to see if there's something there, that doesn't mean that the previous homeowner didn't do a proper tank abandonment. And when I say a proper tank abandonment, I mean inspecting the tank to make sure it's not leaking, performing a soil analysis from around the tank, removing all the liquids, and then filling it with an inert solid approved by whatever municipality, which varies from county to city. And then by there, that's when you again have to consult a professional to perform that underground fuel tank inspection to verify that, yes, this thing has been properly abandoned by the state fire code, state building code, and then also satisfies the requirements of the Virginia DEQ that this thing isn't leaking or has ever leaked.
If you find a tank has leaked, what are the responsibilities of the homeowner?
Responsibilities of the homeowner, once a leak is discovered, is to report it to the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality.
Right.
And again, this is something that Pollard Environmental and other environmental consultants, you would want to contract them to do this because there is a great deal of paperwork involved, and you want to be able to pass that over to someone that you can trust who's going to handle everything in the proper channels. But yeah, reporting it to the state is the first thing you would want to do. And from there, the case would be assigned to a case manager, and they would decide any type of necessary environmental compliance necessary. And they take in a lot of factors such as, is there a drinking water well on the property? Is there a basement? Is there a crawl space? Is there a body of water in the vicinity? Those are all considered possible receptors that would be affected if an underground petroleum tank or underground heating oil tank was leaking.
Okay.
Look, I have to back up on that question. So if you have an oil tank or you list a house and the people don't know, and now all of a sudden there's one, you're supposed to report that to the state?
Well, so again, there's two sides to it. There's the environmental compliance side. You're going to want to, so in the case that you bought a house unknowingly and discover a heating oil tank after you've purchased it, you're going to want to get it inspected to see if it has leaked or is leaking. From there, you would need to report that leak. If it comes back, the soil analysis demonstrates that there was a petroleum release. and then the Virginia DEQ would decide on whatever environmental compliance is necessary.
Now, I'm going to ask a question because I sold an older home in downtown Franklin on a large piece of property. Mm-hmm. They had an oil tank. They replaced it with gas lines and, a gas furnace. Mm-hmm. But we ran the tests on it and discovered it had been leaking. And if I'm not mistaken, there's a fund, or there was a state fund to help defray the cost of mitigating that. Is that correct?
There's a fund. It was established in 1992, I believe. It's the Virginia Petroleum Storage Tank Fund, and it can help mitigate the cost to the owners of a property that has a leaking underground heating oil tank to help cover a good deal of the out-of-pocket cost to deal with the environmental remediation.
But we went through the process with the assistance of professionals,
exactly,
such as yourself.
There's no certified or licensed necessary to perform underground fuel tank inspections, but you are going to want to hire an environmental consultant to basically take this task over for you and make sure that all the proper soil testing and report writing that the state requires to deal with these leaking underground tanks is performed correctly, so that there isn't any further ramifications down the line from it.
How expensive is it to have a tank site inspected?
Inspections cost can between $200 and $400.
And that's including soil tests?
That does include a soil test. And that's the main thing, is because sometimes, a tank test, they'll just stick like a stick down the fill pipe, and there's a watercolor paste, we'll say, well, there's no water in the tank, that means it's not leaking. That's not necessarily true. A soil test from around the tank is going to be the greatest indicator that a petroleum release is or has occurred.
Now that's a boring?
That is a boring. It's done with just a hand auger. Sometimes a geoprobe would be used, and all that is a hydraulic powered push machine that obtains a sample from depth. But you're generally looking at a pocket cost just to inspect it of around $200 to $400.
Okay. Kim?
Wow, that's a lot. And the state program that we're talking about, so what do you do? Is there an application? Can anybody apply?
Well, anyone can use the state fund. That is true. And again, it comes back to there is no requirements to be licensed for it. But you're going to want to have a consultant who's familiar with it, such as Pollard Environmental, who, after reporting the release to the state, is able to provide all that paperwork necessary and deal with any of the environmental cleanup that the state may decide. And that can sometimes involve, depending on the severity of the leakage, it could involve the tank being removed and contaminated soils being excavated. It could deal with groundwater surveys to make sure that the released oil isn't moving towards someone's drinking water well, which is the main factor, is protecting human health and the environment. So.
Right. This is going to be a really stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because it's always
Kim, no question is stupid. Answers can be stupid, but not questions.
Okay. Well, we have oil in the earth. Comes up from the bottom of the ocean. Why? I don't understand the big thing about the making oil tanks, to be honest with you. I'm sure that's a crazy question.
You're from Texas.
Yeah, Texas tea.
No, I understand. I understand. You're just protecting your home state's interest. I got it.
Right. Don't get rid of my oil now.
No, the thing is it's just when a leaking oil tank is near someone's drinking water well, it's a lot closer than it would be with natural oil deposits or reserves that could be thousands of feet away or miles away, especially. So the main thing is to make sure that this released oil is going to the furnace to create heat instead of getting into people's drinking water wells or nearby bodies of water that can cause environmental issues.
Right. And the other thing I've always wanted to ask somebody is, I know oil is expensive and people don't, the connotation of oil heat, but the people that I know that still have it, it's a warm heat. I mean, it feels nice in their house, and it's a lot better than my heat pump that I've got at my house. This is an older neighborhood that I live in, but it kind of gets a bad reputation sometimes, it seems.
Hey, heating oil is an excellent source of heat. It produces the highest, heat for your dollar, basically. Even though there's been, great advances in heat pump technology, nothing really beats heating oil. But the main thing is making sure that heating oil is getting to your furnace and not going into the ground and getting out of the tank, because then not only are you're losing money, and heating oil can be expensive, but then you're also going into the complication of potentially affecting the environment and other people's welfare.
Right. And the other thing with the oil heat is seems like not everybody can work on those boilers. In property management, I've found not every HVAC person is savvy.
Very few. I have a little bit of experience in that I was a consultant to John's Brothers Heating Oil before it was sold, and the lack of trained technicians was severe. And so they conducted their own training. We're at a point now where we're going to have to take a break. This is Paul Fuqua, and we've got Kim Pimento and our expert, Mr. Reagan, on heating oil tanks. And we're going to be back to the PB&J Hour in just a little bit. Stay tuned.
Now back to the Real Estate PB&J Hour on Money Talk 1310 and 100.9 FM. Rosenwomble Realtor Paul Fuqua gives you the fundamentals of real estate selling, buying, owning, and improving your home.
Welcome back to the PB&J Hour, the Real Estate PB&J Hour. I'm Paul Fuqua, and I'm joined in studio by Matt Reagan from Pollard Environmental, with whom we've been discussing the heating oil tank remediation. And, of course, we're joined remotely by the wonderful Kim Pimento, who, of course, shows her Texas roots when she starts talking about how wonderful oil heat is. Am I misstating that, Ms. Pimento?
Well, not that it's so wonderful, but it is a nice heat, and I think it's very underrated. I mean, I think it gets kind of a bad rap.
Yes, it does. But it's also messy.
Yes.
Yeah. And when the trucks come around and fill it, people don't like it. The dogs get excited, and you don't know what time it's going to be. And if they spill in the front yard, it messes up your thing. But it is efficient.
Oh, yeah.
It is. And Matt can bear us out there. But I'm going to ask him a question. If we discover there's a tank in the yard, as there is in the front of my house, right where I want to extend the driveway, can the tank be removed?
Of course. The first step, obviously, get it inspected. From there, you can see if there's going to be any requirements decided by the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. At that point, it can be removed. Usually, these tanks they're small. They're a normal home is going to have either a 300 or a 550 gallon, sometimes a 1,000-gallon tank. They're bare steel. They look like sideways Coke cans in the ground. They're removed with.
They don't look like the ones that you see propped up on stands beside a house out there in Moyock?
No, the above ground tanks are those oblong shaped ones. These ones are just horizontal cylinders in the ground, and they're removed using a smaller piece of equipment, either a backhoe or an excavator.
Now, if you're not using it, you can just leave it there, right?
Well, see, we discussed the environmental side of it, but then there's the other side of that coin is the Virginia Uniform Statewide Fire Code and Building Code, which states that if an underground fuel tank is out of service for more than a year, then it needs to be properly abandoned. And when I say properly abandoned, I don't mean just forgetting about it or plugging the fill pipe. It needs to be either filled in place with an inert solid approved by the local county or city, or it needs to be removed. That's a proper abandonment of an underground oil tank.
Now, and that's where there's a fund.
The fund doesn't necessarily cover the filling or removing of the tank. You know, the fund is
Only if it's contaminated? Is that right?
Only if it's contaminated, and then not even all the time. You know, if the tank is leaking significantly, then that fund will just come in place to do whatever the DEQ wants to do for the environmental remediation.
Right.
There's a small deductible that you pay, but then everything else after that is covered up to $1 million worth of work done.
These are on residential only, or are we talking commercial too?
These are residential. There is a state fund for, the Virginia Petroleum Storage Tank Fund will cover a commercial tank as well, but if it's a commercial tank, that's when the deductible increases. And the larger tank you get, the higher that deductible gets. But that's in place just because a smaller heating oil tank, it shouldn't be outputting that much fuel into the ground.
Right. Kim, you got it?
Well, and so basically what you're saying, if it's abandoned or not used anymore, it doesn't really matter if it's leaking or not. It needs to be properly abated and taken care of or filled.
That's correct. So in our case, like Pollard Environmental, if the tanks, after we kind of find out if it's leaking or not or has ever leaked, now it needs to be properly abandoned. You would contract us to either fill it or remove it. You can fill it with certain things. Again, that varies from county to county. Typically, it's a slurry, which is basically just grout. Foam can be used. Sometimes cement is required. It seems a lot of counties and cities are now phasing out just filling the tank with sand. They're looking for a more inert material that is going to completely fill up that volume of the tank. So like if you said earlier, when you wanted to pave your driveway over your existing underground tank, you don't have to worry about that thing collapsing.
Right. Okay.
So another question is, okay, so you've got one that's underground. Now, do you test for leakage for that as well, or you just fill them?
No. I would. I always advise to any homeowner with an underground tank to perform that tank inspection first and foremost, because that's going to get you on the right path with being in compliance with the environmental side. And getting everything necessary done through the DEQ.
Now, when they plant these tanks underground, how deep are they?
It varies. Back in the day when they were building these houses, throwing them up, there wasn't really any set specifications. They could be anywhere from 6 inches to a foot, all the way down to 4 inches to the top of them. And they vary in size, too. Like I said, typically you're going to find one. It's going to be about 4 foot in diameter and about 6 feet long. That's a 550-gallon tank. And again, it's just that horizontal cylinder. Well,
in my neighborhood, we still have folks that have the oil companies fill. I guess I could ask one of them how much a fill-up is, and that would give me an idea of how big that tank was that was abandoned in my house.
Exactly. Yeah, they're pretty uniform. If you have neighbors that have one, they're basically going to be around the same size.
Right. Does Pollard Environmental deal with any other issues other than heating oil tanks?
It's strictly heating oil tanks, either from underground or above ground.
What's the worst set of circumstances you've come across in your career dealing with this subject?
The worst part is when a homeowner purchases a house and it's not disclosed that there's a heating oil tank, and then over time this leak gets worse and worse, and then all of a sudden they wake up and go down into their basement or maybe even their crawl space around this area, and they start smelling that heating oil fumes, and that's the worst case scenario, is when oil leaks out enough from these tanks to impact someone's living space and their drinking water well, because at that point it's now starting to affect human health, and that's the main worry and main concern for these things.
And you've seen those? Have you seen that?
Oh yeah, basements have been 2 or 3 inches full of oil. You see
out of a leaking tank that wasn't in use, or was it in use?
Even out of use or in use, because sometimes people will just, they don't pump out the tank. They don't do a proper abandonment. They just leave it in there with a tank full of oil, and it's going to get out sometimes. These tanks are bare steel. It'd be like if you just buried a car in the ground for 30 years. Eventually, it's going to rust.
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah.
On the ones that are underneath the house, do you ever take those out, or are they always just filled?
That's a common thing that I've run into. An addition will be built over a previous underground heating oil tank. Those ones sometimes can be removed. They're a little tricky. It depends on the clearance. Most of the time, they're going to be filled in place with either a foam or cement or slurry.
Yeah, because like mine and the last one that I had a home inspection, we had one. The pipe was so close to the house, it must have just been, like almost underneath the crawl space in a way.
Yeah, that occurs. Sometimes people will build foundations right over the top of tanks. It's pretty crazy. And then also there's occasions where you'll see a pipe on very close, like the fill port will be on the side of the house. And that fill port, again, is just a 2-inch steel pipe, has a little cap on it. Sometimes that's called a remote fill. And segments of pipe will lead inside to a basement or crawl space to remotely fill the tank from there.
Yeah, do you ever use cameras? You can send a camera down there?
We'll use cameras, do a little probe, trying to find out where these things are going, try and get an idea of what's still inside the tank. When the tank's in a position like that, underneath a house, underneath a crawl space, underneath driveways, that's when an inspection cost might be increased. Right. But there are definitely ways to inspect these tanks and then properly abandon them, no matter basically where they are.
Before we go any further, I want to remind our audience who we are. This is Paul Fuqua and Kim Pimento. You're listening to the Real Estate PB&J Hour. You can on Money Talk 1310 AM, 100.9 FM, and MoneyTalk1310.com. You can reach us if you have any questions. This is the time to call. It's 497-1310 at area code 757. That's part of our job, is to let you know that what we do here is bring to the forefront people who can help us, meaning Kim and I as real estate agents, represent our people, represent our sellers, represent our buyers, so we know what's going on. But hopefully you can tap into this body of knowledge that Matt has brought forth for us. Now, I'm going to go back to my personal circumstances now that I've done the restatement, they call it, of what station we are. Should I bring you guys in again, because we had it mitigated under the previous ownership, because we knew there was a tank there, and I got a certificate demonstrating that it had been properly and filled or whatever. I'd have to pull the file out. And that it was inspected, and then they came back 30 days later and re-inspected because there was some kind of a little vent tube. Well, I don't, this is a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. Now I want to put 4 inches of concrete over that. Do I have you out there to inspect it, see if it's okay, or do I go ahead and just say, all right, let's go ahead and remove this thing and we'll fill, and then we'll have a problem potentially of the concrete collapsing where there was a tank?
I would say that if you had proper documentation, one, from the whatever locality it is or city.
This is Norfolk.
Mm-hmm. If you have a permit from them stating that the tank was properly filled, that's excellent. And then also if you have documentation that the results of the soil test that you obtained was reported to the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, right, and then that the DEQ signed off on, whatever decision they made at the time. Those two sides right there, having the environmental side and having the statewide building code side signed off on, you're pretty golden. Okay. But if you were lacking those, then that's when I would come in as Pollard Environmental or another environmental consultant and verify that this tank is not going to cause problems for you in the future, especially if you're going to be driving your car over it.
Another question, are they not registered with the state, like, the health department kind of monitors septic systems?
No, they're unregulated tanks, so there isn't like some type of list that you can look up to see if there is a tank on a property. Sometimes there'll be a permit for a locality, but not often.
Do you think that by now they would have started kind of registering or keeping track of the ones who've been properly, done?
They do register the ones that have been properly abandoned, and then you can pull up the records on those. But as far as ones that they don't know about, there's pretty bare bones records for them.
Okay.
So you can pull up the records. Where would you go to do that?
You call Pollard Environmental.
$75, right?
Yeah. He just smiled at that. Maybe $50 we get a special discount if they mention the Real Estate PB&J hours. Could that happen, Matt?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. Just call. We have 3 minutes left.
Okay.
Okay. So give us all your information, where your office is, how to reach you, what your website is.
So again, I'm Matthew Reagan with Pollard Environmental. Our website is www.pollardenvironmental.com. Look us up there. And also our office number is 757-698-4070.
And your offices are located in Chesapeake? Or
We're located in Chesapeake. We service all of the Tidewater area. If you're listening and you know someone that has a tank out in Charlottesville, we can take care of those as well.
Yeah, because of where your home office is.
As long as it's in Virginia, we can take care of it.
Rockville, Virginia. I love that. All right.
Yeah, but so you don't go down to North Carolina?
Only in Virginia for right now.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's go. We're coming to the end of another Real Estate PB&J hour. Paul Fuqua and Kim Pimento. We thank you so much for being here. And remember, we welcome your input. We welcome your advice. We welcome your responses to what we say. And if you would, please go on to the YouTube channel at the Real Estate PB&J Hour. Subscribe, costs you nothing. And if you have subjects that you'd like to explore, send me an email at psfuqua@aol.com, psfuqua@aol.com. Or you can just look up FuquaHomesales.com or PaulFuquaRealtor.com. Lots of ways to use my name and get it pronounced properly. And I know I speak for Kim when I thank you for joining us for another episode of this show. And we hope you've enjoyed it and you're learning a little more about some elements of concern that really don't impact anything that was built after the late 70s, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Matt?
Not really, but occasionally you'll find someone who still likes that heating oil, and so they put one in the 90s.
Right. Very unusual.
Oh, yeah.
And if there's anything that we haven't covered on this subject, please send me an email, and we'll get to it. Now, next week, I'm going to be in Dallas, Texas, and I'm going to find out why Kim Pimento loves the state so well
Yes.
and so much. So she is going to be your main host or hostess of the show, and so it'll be the Paul Fuqua Real Estate PB&J Hour, featuring and starring the wonderful Kim Pimento. Thank you so much for listening, and until next week, please enjoy yourself and stay safe over the Labor Day weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.